The content on this channel is for educational and entertainment purposes only. While we strive for accuracy, we are not responsible for any misinterpretations. The information presented is for storytelling and exploration of criminal cases. Viewer discretion is advised. By viewing, you acknowledge that this content is not intended as professional advice or guidance. Viewer discretion is advised. In the quiet suburban neighborhood of Levittown, Pennsylvania, the Mohn family lived a life that many would consider idyllic. Michael F. Mohn, a 68-year-old engineer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, had dedicated his career to public service. His wife, Denise, was a devoted mother and homemaker, and their son, Justin D. Mohn, was their only child. Justin, 33, had a history of academic success and a promising future. He graduated from Penn State University and briefly worked at Microsoft before returning to Levittown. However, his transition back home was marked by a series of personal and professional struggles. Despite his parents' unwavering support, Justin found it challenging to secure stable employment and often clashed with them over his political beliefs and aspirations. Over time, the Mohn household became a battleground of ideological differences. Justin's views grew increasingly radical, influenced by conspiracy theories and anti-government rhetoric. He began to isolate himself, spending hours online, engaging with extremist content, and expressing disdain for federal institutions. Michael and Denise, concerned for their son's well-being, attempted to intervene. They encouraged him to seek professional help and offer financial support as he looked for work. Despite their efforts, Justin's behavior became more erratic. He believed that his father, a longtime federal employee, was part of a corrupt system that had thwarted his ambitions. On January 30th, 2024, Justin's frustrations reached a boiling point. Armed with a newly purchased Sig Sauer 9mm handgun, he confronted his father in the family home. In a chilling act of violence, Justin shot Michael in the head, ending his life in an instant. But the horror didn't end there. Justin proceeded to decapitate his father's body with a kitchen knife and a machete. He then filmed a 14-minute video displaying the severed head and ranting against the government. The video was uploaded to YouTube, where it remained for several hours before being removed. Denise returned home that evening to find the unimaginable. She discovered her husband's lifeless body in the bathroom, his head missing. In a state of shock, she called 911, her screams echoing through the house. As authorities investigated, they uncovered disturbing evidence. Justin had left behind a to-do list titled Boom and Slice, indicating premeditation. A USB device found in his possession contained images of federal buildings and instructions for making explosives. He had also attempted to breach Fort Indian Town Gap, the Pennsylvania National Guard headquarters, later that day. Justin was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, terrorism-related offenses, and other crimes. The community was left in disbelief, struggling to comprehend how a son could commit such a heinous act against his own father. When the police arrived at the Mohn residence on January 30th, 2024, the scene they encountered was nothing short of horrific. Denise Mohn, the mother, was beside herself with grief and terror as she pointed to the mutilated body of her husband. Authorities quickly cordoned off the area, and forensics teams moved in to investigate. Justin Mohn had already fled the scene, but police were able to trace his whereabouts through security camera footage and his car's GPS system. He was eventually apprehended in a secluded area just outside Levittown, still in possession of the murder weapon and his father's severed head. As the officers led him to the police car, Justin's expression was one of eerie calmness. He didn't resist arrest. In fact, he appeared almost detached from the horror of his actions, as if they hadn't truly occurred. His mind, they would later discover, was steeped in conspiracy theories and a deep-seated hatred of the federal government. The video Justin recorded after murdering his father was uploaded online, causing a wave of shock and outrage across the country. In the disturbing footage, Justin could be seen holding his father's severed head in his hands. His speech is incoherent at times, filled with violent rhetoric and a tirade against what he perceived as the corrupt government system that had ruined his life. They'll never win. You see, my father was part of the machine that has been controlling us. And now they'll all understand what happens when you stand in the way of truth. The authorities quickly removed the video, but by then, it had already been shared widely across the internet. People were horrified by his actions and his apparent belief in his own righteousness. Mental health professionals, upon reviewing the video, pointed to clear signs of psychotic breakdown, but there was no denying the premeditation that went into his father's murder. Justin Mohn was arraigned in court on February 3, 2024. His charges were severe: first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, terrorism, and attempted assault on a federal installation. The state of Pennsylvania was seeking the death penalty, citing the brutality of the murder and Justin's apparent desire to send a message to the government. However, as the trial began, it became clear that this would be no simple case. The defense team, led by Lindsay McAllister, argued that Justin was suffering from severe mental illness. They pointed to his history of depression, social isolation, and increasing radicalization due to his time spent online. McAllister suggested that Justin had been influenced by the dark corners of the internet, where hate groups and conspiracy theorists thrived. She claimed that the lone wolf mentality Justin had adopted, along with his belief in government corruption, led him to commit the murder as an act of protest. My client, Justin Mohn, did not commit this crime out of malice. He was mentally ill and deeply disturbed by the world around him, McAllister stated during her opening argument. The prosecution, led by Henry Barrow, countered with a damning portrayal of Justin's actions. They presented evidence of detailed planning, including the boom and slice to-do list found in his belongings, which clearly showed that the murder was not a spur-of-the-moment act, but premeditated, calculated decision. Barrow also noted that Justin's actions weren't limited to just his father's murder. He had shown an increasing interest in violence against government institutions. This wasn't just a domestic tragedy. It was a politically motivated crime. This is not the act of a man suffering from illness. Your Honor, this is the act of a man who planned, prepared, and executed a brutal, intentional act of violence. As the trial went on, Justin remained silent for much of the proceedings. His eyes were vacant, and he refused to interact with anyone. He only spoke briefly to his defense attorney, muttering phrases about the corrupt government and how his father was part of a greater conspiracy. As the defense pushed for a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, the court ordered a full psychiatric evaluation of Justin Mohn. He was examined by Dr. Rachel Montgomery, a leading forensic psychologist who spent several hours with him over the course of a week. Dr. Montgomery's assessment was thorough. She interviewed Justin about his background, his political views, and his personal life. The deeper she delved, the more disturbing the findings became. Justin had been diagnosed with severe depression as a teenager, which had only worsened over time. He had been prescribed medication in the past, but he stopped taking a few years before the murder. He also admitted to spending hours every day consuming extremist content online, including videos promoting violence and anti-government rhetoric. But perhaps the most chilling revelation came when Dr. Montgomery spoke with Justin about his relationship with his father. Justin's demeanor changed completely. He spoke about Michael Mohn with a cold detachment, almost as if his father had been a stranger. "My father wasn't my father," Justin said during one session. "He was part of the system, the machine. He always sided with them. He didn't care about me. He cared about the government. He sold me out just like they all do." Dr. Montgomery concluded that Justin's deep hatred for his father and his radicalized beliefs were the result of a long-standing psychosis, which had been exacerbated by years of isolation and exposure to extremist ideologies. However, she also acknowledged that Justin's actions were calculated, not impulsive. The question that now faced the court was whether Justin was mentally competent to stand trial, and if he was, whether he would be held fully accountable for his actions. As the trial proceeded, the public's fascination with the case grew. Media outlets covered every detail, from the shocking murder to the disturbing video and Justin's bizarre courtroom behavior. Social media erupted with debates over the justice system's treatment of people with mental health issues, and many expressed outrage over Justin's apparent lack of remorse. "This kid needs to pay for what he did. No excuses. His father was murdered in the most brutal way possible," one Twitter user wrote. On the other hand, some sympathized with Justin's mental state. He was clearly disturbed. We can't just lock people away without understanding the root cause of their actions, a mental health advocate tweeted. The case had polarized the nation. The defense team prepared for their final argument, insisting that Justin was not responsible for his actions due to his mental illness. But just before the closing statements, a shocking development occurred. A previously undiscovered piece of evidence was presented. A letter was found among Justin's belongings, hidden deep inside a drawer in his bedroom. It was addressed to his mother, Denise Mohn, and it contained a chilling message. "You'll never understand. He was part of the plan. The government always wins. But now I've taken him down." As the defense and prosecution exchanged nervous glances, a bombshell was dropped. Justin wasn't just angry at his father. He believed that his father was involved in a much larger conspiracy, and that his actions were a preemptive strike against a government takeover. The letter, now under scrutiny, raised even more questions than answers. What did Justin mean by the plan? Was he part of something bigger? And if so, who was he working with? The revelation of the letter found among Justin Mohn's belongings sent shockwaves through court. The words, "He was part of the plan. The government always wins. But now, I've taken him down," resonated through the room, stirring unease among both the prosecution and defense teams. Justin's attorney, Lindsay McAllister, quickly attempted to dismiss the letter as a sign of his mental instability, but the prosecution insisted that it was evidence of something far more sinister, a premeditated act of terror against the government. In the days following the letter's discovery, the defense team scrambled to figure out its implications. Dr. Rachel Montgomery, the forensic psychologist, was called back to testify regarding the mental state of Justin. But even she was baffled by the letter's content. "This doesn't fit the profile of someone acting solely out of mental illness," Dr. Montgomery explained to the court. "Justin may have had a psychotic break, but his actions were far more calculated. The letter indicates premeditation and a possible influence from outside sources, perhaps a larger ideological movement. This new twist forced both sides to reassess their arguments. The FBI immediately took the letter seriously, launching a full investigation into the possibility that Justin had been radicalized by a network of conspiracy theorists or extremist groups. The prosecution painted a grim picture of a son who had been systematically indoctrinated into a violent ideology, while the defense pushed the notion that Justin's actions were a result of a mental health crisis, exacerbated by years of isolation and radicalization. While the defense tried to maintain that Justin acted alone, the FBI's investigation revealed unsettling details. Agents discovered that Justin had been in contact with several online communities known for promoting anti-government rhetoric and conspiracy theories. He had shared multiple posts on anonymous forums, where he expressed a growing distrust of federal institutions. These posts, some of which dated back several years, painted a picture of a man who had become increasingly paranoid about government corruption. One post, from just 6 months before the murder, stood out. "They're all corrupt. It's all a game. They want control, and they'll stop at nothing to get it. I can't sit back and let them keep pushing us down. It's time to act." The FBI also traced a series of encrypted messages from Justin to Victor Roman, the same man who had been implicated in the conspiracy. Victor Roman, it seemed, had become an influential figure in Justin's life during the final months leading up to the murder. The messages revealed that Victor had encouraged Justin to take radical steps, feeding into his already existing hatred of his father and the government. "Your father is just a cog in a machine. He doesn't see the truth like you do. You'll be the one to make a difference. The government needs to be exposed, and you can start with him." The link between Justin and Victor Roman raised several troubling questions. Had Victor been manipulating Justin into committing the murder as part of a larger, orchestrated plot? If so, what was the ultimate goal? Victor Roman, once a name only mentioned in passing, was now the center of the investigation. The FBI's efforts to locate him intensified as they began to piece together his connections with far-right extremist groups and his known history of inciting violence. He had been a shadowy figure, staying off the radar, but he was suspected of influencing several young people like Justin, feeding them extremist ideologies. Victor's whereabouts remained unknown, but the authorities were certain that he had a role in planning the murder. The most disturbing piece of evidence came when they discovered a video recording in which Victor was seen speaking directly to an audience that included Justin. In the video, Victor said, We are at war with the system. The government will crush us, but we can't let them. You, the brave few, must rise up. This is your chance to make a stand. But remember, it's not enough to just talk. Action is required. Be prepared to do whatever it takes to expose them. It was chilling to think that Justin, in his vulnerable state, had latched onto these words. The video was a rallying cry, a call to action that had been delivered to a group of people who believed that they were part of an underground movement fighting for justice. But as the pieces came together, it became clear that the actions Justin took were far more than just an isolated act of violence. They were part of a much larger scheme. As the trial continued, the defense doubled down on their argument that Justin was not guilty by reason of insanity. They argued that he was under the influence of a delusion, manipulated by outside forces like Victor Roman and the extremist communities online. However, the prosecution was relentless, and as they laid out their case, they painted a clear picture of Justin as a willing participant in a calculated act of terrorism. The courtroom was divided, with some jurors expressing sympathy for Justin's mental state, while others saw his actions as cold and premeditated. On March 15, 2024, as the defense was preparing its final argument, an unexpected development occurred. The FBI announced that they had discovered a second video, one that had not been seen by the public or by the defense team. The video, found on a hidden hard drive recovered from Victor Roman's residence, was a chilling recording of Justin Mohn and Victor Roman discussing their plans in detail. "This is bigger than just your father," Victor said in the video. "The government is on the brink of collapse, but we have to be smart about this. We have to start with the weak spots. We need to show them that we mean business." The video abruptly cut off, but the implications were clear. Justin had not just killed his father out of anger or delusion. He had been part of a larger, coordinated plan that was aimed at destabilizing the system itself. With this new evidence, the trial took an unexpected turn. The prosecution filed for a special hearing, requesting that Victor Roman be named as an accomplice in the murder. The defense, however, argued that the video was inadmissible, claiming that it was tainted by improper handling during the FBI's investigation. As the judge deliberated over whether or not to allow the second video into evidence, a shocking phone call was made to the court. "This is Victor Roman. I'm ready to talk." The courtroom fell silent. The man behind the plot, the one who had seemingly disappeared from the radar, had just resurfaced. The courtroom was in stunned silence as Victor Roman's voice echoed through the speakerphone. He had agreed to speak with authorities, and his decision come forward would change everything. "I'll tell you everything you need to know," Victor's voice crackled through the courtroom. "But first, I want immunity. I want to be sure I can walk out of here without being put in a cell for the rest of my life." The judge, stunned by the sudden turn of events, turned to both the defense and prosecution. Victor Roman, the man who had been a shadow throughout this trial, now had the power to destroy everything. The FBI had hoped he would eventually be apprehended, but they never expected him to give himself up willingly, especially not with such dangerous information at his disposal. The prosecution team, led by Henry Barrow, quickly agreed to negotiate a deal with Victor, but the conditions were strict. He would have to provide full cooperation with the investigation, and his immunity would be contingent on his truthfulness. With the stakes higher than ever, Victor began his confession. Victor's confession was chilling in its detail. He revealed that his involvement with Justin went far beyond mere radicalization. Victor was a leader of an underground group known as the Patriots of the Republic, a group that sought to overthrow the U.S. government. The group believed that the American political system had been corrupted beyond repair and that violent action was necessary to restore freedom. Justin, in his fragile mental state, had become the perfect recruit. Victor had targeted him through online extremist forums, where Justin was already posting anti-government content. They had connected over shared beliefs, and Victor quickly became a mentor to Justin, filling his mind with visions of a revolution. "We knew we needed someone to act, someone to take the first step," Victor explained during his testimony. "Justin was the one we had been waiting for. He had the anger, the frustration, and the willingness to go all the way. I convinced him that taking out his father, a man who worked for the government, would send a strong message." Victor continued to explain how the murder of Michael Mohn was a strategic move designed to spark something larger. They believed that the death of a federal employee would inspire others to follow suit and strike against the government. But what they hadn't anticipated was how quickly Justin would spiral out of control. What was intended to be a part of a larger scheme had devolved into a personal vendetta, a personal act of violence against his father. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Victor admitted. Justin was supposed to get the ball rolling, but after the murder, he started acting alone. He took things too far. He filmed that video because he thought it would solidify his place in the cause. Justin had become so deeply invested in Victor's ideology that he had ignored any boundaries, murdering his father, filming the grotesque video, and then reaching out to more extreme groups, believing that he was playing a key role in a much larger fight. Victor's confession not only exposed the full extent of his involvement, but also shed light on the larger extremist network he was part of. The FBI was able to connect several other high-profile criminal cases to his group. They discovered that the Patriots of the Republic had been involved in smaller, isolated acts of violence across the U.S., always targeting individuals or institutions they deemed as corrupt. The public reaction to Victor's confession was intense. The media frenzy surrounding the trial only escalated, as people realized just how deeply Justin had been manipulated. Mental health advocates began to push for better regulation of extremist content online, while many in the political sphere argue for stronger action against homegrown terrorism. Justin's case became a flashpoint for debates over radicalization, mental illness, and the responsibilities of online platforms. The tragic death of Michael Mohn, once viewed as a personal tragedy, now symbolized the dangers of unchecked radical ideologies and the devastating impact they could have on families. The trial finally reached its conclusion. The jury deliberated for 3 days before returning with a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, and terrorism-related charges. The defense team had pushed for a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity, emphasizing Justin's mental state and the influence of Victor Roman. However, the jury found that Justin's actions were premeditated and that, despite his mental illness, he was still capable of understanding the gravity of his actions. The judge sentenced Justin Mohn to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the gavel came down, there was a sense of finality in the courtroom. The Mohn family, though torn apart by the brutal murder, could finally begin to heal, knowing that justice had been served. However, the tragic irony remained. Michael Mohn, a dedicated father and government worker, had been killed by his own son, who believed he was part of a grand, revolutionary cause. As for Victor Roman, his future was still uncertain. His confession had earned him immunity from prosecution, but the authorities were far from done with him. They now had a long list of charges to file against him, ranging from terrorism to conspiracy. Despite his role in the plot, he had no intention of going down quietly. Victor was transferred to a high-security federal facility, where he would face charges that could keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. But Victor's story wasn't over. Investigators knew he had connections to several other extremist groups, and they were determined to bring them all to justice. The case of Justin Mohn and Victor Roman sent ripples through American society, sparking debates about mental illness, online radicalization, and the rise of domestic terrorism. It was a reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of everyday life, of how deeply personal grievances, when mixed with extremist ideologies, could lead to unspeakable violence. For the Mohn family, the emotional toll was immense. Denise Mohn, though devastated by the loss of her husband, vowed to ensure that Michael's memory lived on in a positive way. She became a vocal advocate for mental health awareness, working with organizations to promote education and support for families affected by radicalization and extremism. As the years went by, Justin Mohn remained incarcerated, a symbol of how personal demons, mental illness, and radical ideologies could converge to create a nightmare. The questions surrounding his actions would never truly be answered, but for the Mohn family and the communities affected, the tragic events of January 30th, 2024 would forever serve as a reminder that violence, once ignited, can take on a life of its own. Don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories like this. Coming soon.